Are things getting better or worse? The feeling of this is really important and I think has just shifted. And this impacts our sense of well-being, our mental health, our meaning. So I grew up in what's known as the post-World War II consensus, where everything was getting better and better and better, right? And everybody said, every time I heard happy birthday, it's my birthday today. Thanks for saying happy birthday in the comments. I felt like, yeah, things are getting better. Every year, go around the sun, gets a little bit better. This sense we're all heading towards Star Trek, right? We're all going to have replicators and teleporters, and if not the crazy space technology, at least sort of things are getting a bit better. The world's developing. Maybe Africa's a bit behind, but they're catching up, and things just look a little bit, a bit richer every year. Your phone gets better every year, and it was like cool. I mean, there was always some sort of potential signs of decay or decadence we could talk about, but it was that sense, right? I think that faltered a little bit in the 90s, and then we had the sort of war of terror, that's what I call it, and it faltered a bit more then. And it's definitely in the last just 2 or 3 years, I think since the Chinese plague, it's really hit a new sense of no one believes that anymore. Right? It doesn't matter whether it's true or not true, because of course, how are you going to look at this objectively? There are things I'm going to point to in this video that have changed objectively. But the felt sense of that, there's a zeitgeist, a spirit of the times, rather than this idea of sort of progress, liberal modernity, going forwards and forwards in time. It's always forwards, upwards, onwards, more. This is the rhetoric. This is like the politicians. We're going forwards, onwards, after more. That changed. Now, conservatives always had this looking back to the past as better. So you've got to be a bit careful here. And as you age, that also happens. There's a few factors. I think the slogan, for example, "Make America Great Again," right? It was more great in the past, like great piece of copywriting, great conservative slogan. That was a sort of sense of more and more people going, hang on, things used to be better. All right, what's changed? Economically, there's no doubt about it. And this is complicated because in one way, it looks like we have lots of stuff, right? So we've all got, our phones, maybe you've got computer games, and you've got the, I'm such an old man, computer games, whatever people do now, Xboxes, PlayStations, whatever. Big TVs, that are actually pretty cheap. It looks like we're super rich on one level, but no one owns anything real. A very small class of people, and increasingly, and Gary's economics will tell you about this, an increasingly small number of people own the assets, the real ownership in real terms. I don't own this house, right? I'm in this beautiful place, center of Slovenia at the moment, absolutely gorgeous. I don't own it, right? There's some boomer who I've never met who owns it, who I'm giving a good chunk of my income to every day to live here, and I'm one of the lucky ones. Now, I know this supposed cost of living crisis they call in the UK. What does that mean? It just means the things that are essential to live are getting harder to get. I think this is obvious to people. The people have only ever really cared about the basics, right? Rent, food, energy costs, fuel costs, healthcare, education, the basics, right? Any government that can get elected or knows if it were really to improve them. Those things are getting worse. Okay, obviously it's different countries, different places, exceptions. But if me, as a top 10% UK tax earner, feels this, my electricity bill was £3,000 for a 3-bedroom house, semi-detached house last year. And this is in the UK. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And if I'm feeling it, I don't know how other people are getting by. So there's a definite economic reality here that isn't just, the recessions come and go, there's ups and downs. It's more than that. It's a sort of neo-feudalism. Right? I look at the Deliveroo drivers, delivery guys, and I think, okay, big chunk of their money is just going to someone they've never met who owns an app. The same with Amazon, with Uber, Airbnb, all these companies, right? Techno-feudalism, it's been called by Yanis, Greek, whatever his name is. So there's an economic reality. But that's actually not the most important one for the sense of things getting worse. The most important one is our sense of meaning. Yeah, this is largely defined by a couple of things. Our sense of belonging and community, destroyed by mass migration, destroyed. Starting industrialization, right? My girlfriend was sad this morning because her family are all in different places. She hardly gets to see them. That's mostly just economic. And then mass migration on top of that. I was in Italy recently, like the UK, just an absolute horror show. Italy, as you know it, is dying. It'll be gone soon. As a result of the sort of decadence of society, as a result of spiritual malaise, people just aren't having kids. Okay, this is, as a result, the powers that be having to import people to keep this cancerous ongoing growth that's in the interests of very few people. The destruction of tribe, the destruction of community. And then, of course, the spiritual destruction, right? It's my birthday today, and I'm like, okay, how many? There's this sort of community aspect. How many people am around? Am I around my tribe? Like many people, I'm very lucky. I can live in nice places now. I've chosen to spend a little bit of time in Slovenia because it's nice in the UK. Probably going back to the UK. So I have a kind of luxury, but there's a cost to that in terms of tribe. So even for the people with money, there's a cost, right? And people who are in areas that are forced to host the third world is definitely the case. The other aspect of that, though, is spiritual. It's like, what's the point in life? You don't have God. You don't have a sense of meaning. If you do, great. And I do see this upsurge in Christian belief. I've started going to church again. And I've seen that amongst people because people are seeking this meaning. They're not being offered it by the wider world, right? But this is still quite minority. It's quite niche, quite exceptional. I mean, young guys particularly seem to be kind of drawing back to it, and that's great. That's great. So on the spiritual level, I think we could say that there's a sort of toxicity. There's always been worldly things, right? There's always been corruption of various kinds, but not with the kind of state backing we see now, not with the kind of money power behind it that we see now. It often feels like, and it's going to sound dramatic, but it feels like we're ruled by demons. When I look at the culture, I look at the world. Mental health, big theme of this channel. So even if people materially okay, that is getting worse. Spiritually, you might say, oh, that's a bit abstract. Okay, mental health. People now are just anxious, depressed, ending themselves in record numbers, particularly young guys, because of these factors, the economic, the spiritual, lack of community. That's got worse. Yes, there's overdiagnosis and people being sensitive, but it's got worse. It's definitely got worse. All the stats back that up, and can you feel it? You can feel it, right? People are crazy in the street. There's a craziness there. You feel it less in some places in Eastern Europe, but the contrast, I go back to London, I go to the UK, any of the Western world. I'm told the States, maybe you can tell me if it's true, but there's an edge. It's noticeable. So when people tell me now, like, happy birthday, I'm always like, yeah, thanks, I appreciate it. I don't want to be too grumpy old man here, right? It's like, it's nice that people say that. But I look to the future and it's bleak. It's really bleak. Now, it's not to deny that, I don't have the freedom and the technology and the access, and I'm able to speak to sometimes thousands of people here, and people, I run my business online and work for, yeah, I get all that. But for the things that really matter, spiritual health, mental health, even physical health, right? Like testosterone levels are incredibly low. We're poisoned. Look at raw egg nationalists on some of this stuff. We're just in a toxic environment. Like it's hard to be healthy in the modern world. Like I feel like it's a part-time job just to keep well enough, right? I was out walking up the hill to be fit this morning, meditating, do some practices, drink plenty of water, be out in nature. Again, I'm relatively skilled in this area. I've taught this stuff for years, and it's still a challenge. And that's the stuff that really matters, right? Physical health, mental health, community, spiritual well-being. That's what matters. So there's a pushback. Obviously, we're increasingly distracted, we're increasingly polarized, divided against each other. But I don't think things are getting better. It looks like there's a feeling I have sometimes, like this kind of societal control coming in. I feel like, God, now I've got to pay to drop someone at the airport, and there's that tax and this, and there's an ID and online, and there's this feeling of sort of a cage coming in. At the same time, like having less and less. Reminds me of that cheesy Justin Timberlake science fiction called About Time, and they have time as money on their arms, and no one has quite enough time, so they're always running. This feeling of scarcity when there should be plenty for everyone, right? Like that's how the modern world feels. And we're completely parasitized by our devices. Many people have made this point. Like, did you choose to watch this? If you watched the end, great, but there's a way in which it's like the algorithms have got us all, right? And even if I'm well-intended and you think this is a good channel or whatever, the impression I get is someone's using it just to send us crazy. Like I made a big video about Civil War, the first one on YouTube, actually, after the big David Betts interview. And I feel like it's been used. Like, who's using that to send us all nuts? So yeah, when people tell me happy birthday, I'm like, yeah, great. I'm gonna have a nice little party tonight with a few friends. It's gonna be pleasant, in some ways, kind of choosing to be happy is an act of defiance against the current system. So there's a choice there. And I don't look to the future with huge optimism. As someone working in personal growth, it's hard to say, right? I'm supposed to be like relentlessly positive. I have coaching courses, blah, blah, blah. But that's just not, it's not true for me. I mean, some of that's just aging, right? Things are falling apart. I got a dental appointment tomorrow. I got a doctor's appointment about an ongoing stomach issue today. And again, I look after myself pretty well, but in the context we're in, it's tricky. So some of that is just, aging. And you could age gracefully more or less, but there's still factors there. But I don't think it's me. I think it's just me personally. My life's pretty nice, right? I live in a nice place, got a nice partner next door, got a little bit of money still in the bank. I do a job I like. And well, I'm not, I'm grateful. My life's good. I don't want this just seem like the whining of an old man, but what's the zeitgeist? To me, the zeitgeist is things are getting worse. And whether that's true or not, that's the feeling. I polled on my social media, and I think it was like 3/4 of my friends. I said, is things getting better or worse? Just give me a quick answer. 3/4 said worse. And I know some quite like optimistic, positive kind of people. So I think maybe it's out there. And that impacts how we are. Maybe a little bit of something useful here at the end. Just because things are getting worse, we're in this period of societal decadence. If we look at cycles, it doesn't mean you can't have a good life. It doesn't mean you can't have a good relationship like I do with my partner. It doesn't mean you have to be miserable all the time, right? But and also I think it doesn't mean denial. So I think there's a healthy middle ground here. See, on the one hand, I hear the people that say, be positive, everything's great, go make money on the internet. Yeah, sure. In a way, we have opportunities like never before, right? Like I've traveled the world in a way my grandfather could have only dreamed of. But on the other hand, there's the people who are like doom and gloom and, there's nothing we can do and everything's screwed. And I think there's a middle line here. It's less sexy. It's less like a good clickbait title. We're all doomed, but everything's fine. Things are getting worse, but that doesn't mean we can't have a reasonable life within that. Maybe as an act of defiance, maybe just to carve that out for ourselves and our families. That's what I've been doing here. I think that's the best I can do. So happy birthday, yeah, maybe. Grumpy old man.